Hello everyone, Darren here, and in today's video we're going to talk about how to play the French heavy tank, the AMX M4 54. This tank is often disliked by many due to numerous issues with its design and statistics, coupled with the fact that it feels like a wannabe Super Conquer, but doesn't perform like one. But, in the right hands, this tank can be a menace on the battlefield. So let's get started. Now, the armor of the M454 is something else in terms of French tanks. Armor-wise, it's very strong on the front of the hull and turret, with a maximum of 300mm being on the mantlet peak and behind the mantlet around the edge. But in typical French design and World of Tanks, armor is all but non-existent on the sides, top, and rear of the tank, as is the case with most all other tanks. Direct weak points, though, are the top of the turret and hull, as big HE guns can splash you there, with the gun mantlet being a good shot trap directly into the top of the hull. The side angled front plates can be weak points too if shown flush to the enemy, but also the cupola is large and able to get hit relatively easy from a decent position. But close range opponents may struggle to hit these weak points due to your size and or position relative to their own size and position. So keep that in mind when you are up close and personal with the enemy, or deciding to get up close and personal with the enemy. Now, in terms of mobility, the M454 is on the average side for heavy tanks, with a forward speed of 40 km per hour and a reverse speed of 15. These are speeds that players familiar with heavy tanks will be accustomed to, as they will be able to keep up with their heavy tank teammates. In terms of fire chance, the M454 has a 15% chance of fire. While a fire extinguisher would be recommended, you can forego the fire extinguisher if the necessary crew skills and perks are trained. Now, in terms of firepower, the M454 has two options for guns, a 120mm and a 130mm option. I have made a comparison between the two guns with the usual stats I focus on and a couple of other stats that are important for this comparison. You can see by this spreadsheet that the 120mm is the better choice, as it's superior to the 130mm in almost every way, with the exception of damage. The 120mm is the more reliable and competitive of the two guns, but if you like guns that take some skill to do well with, then the 130mm might be for you. Now, how do you set up the M454? Well, in terms of consumables, I will make my recommendations based on the 120mm gun, as it is the preferred and more competitive option. I use 23 AP, 15 APCR, and 2 HE for lightly armored targets or artillery. I also use a repair kit, a first aid kit, and a fire extinguisher because of my luck with artillery, but you can swap the fire extinguisher for food if you have the necessary skills. For equipment, I run a gun rammer, vertical stabilizers, and vents to improve the gun handling and overall performance in brawls, but if you prefer vision, you can swap vents for optics if you wish to do so. Now, how do you play the M454? Well, to start with, I would like to remind you that I think the 120mm is the more competitive gun. The main strength of this tank is its strong upper and lower hull armor and its flexibility. The main weaknesses are the pretty bad DPM and the numerous weak points in the armor. To get the most from this tank, you need to know when to alternate between a frontline heavy and a second line heavy. Generally, you want to be playing at the front if there is a strong position for you to take with your fairly good speed. Ideally, a position where you are able to be above your opponents or hide your weak points from them. This tank has a huge forehead and a rather big cupola, so you want to try to avoid giving your opponents easy shots at them. When you peek your opponents, you should utilize this tank's very quick aim and quickly peek your enemy and give them as little chance as possible to hit your cupola. Sometimes there is no such position for you to take, and you may find yourself brawling in the typical heavy tank areas. This is where I would recommend playing a second line heavy. At close range on flat ground, even the most inaccurate guns are likely to hit your cupola if they are are able to even get a shot on your weak points there at the top of your tank. You can't side scrape against your opponents because of the shoulder weaknesses there at the front and also the side armor as well. And although your lower plate is good against standard ammo and you can bait enemies into shooting it, premium rounds will go straight through. Lastly, I would like to mention that this tank does perform very well against tier 8 tanks due to the all-around strong frontal armor. If you do get in their face, they pretty much can't do anything to you. Also, this tank is huge and is an easy shot for artillery, especially with your side profile, so be aware of that. This concludes an overview of the M454, so let's look at some gameplay. So here we are on Heilbronn South Spawn on the encounter game mode. Real quick, I'd like to say thank you to Flying Egg, my assistant, for getting me this replay while I wait for my new bank card to arrive so I can repay for Xbox Live. Also, if you hear the dog barking in the background behind numerous doors, I apologize. I did the best I could. But anyway, he's going right there to right where the cap is, doing some pre-game saluting. You know how it is. Anyway, back on topic here. He's going here, and what he wants to try and do is meet the enemy before they get to a place where he can't shoot. Like I told you in the how to play, if you have elevation on the enemy, you fare much better in this because you do have a decent amount of gun depression, but not a whole lot to warrant being able to just sit on top of a hill, or you have to expose yourself a little bit. So it's a bit risky, but he makes the good decision of going right on the road there, so he's able to get more of view than what he would get cresting the ridge and exposing more of his overall profile. This tank is very large, and with artillery actually in play in this game, he needs to be very careful, because if the artillery decides to focus him the entire game, it will be very difficult to escape, especially in a big open map like this. He would actually have to completely leave where he's at in order to find already safe positions. Seeing that he's not going to be able to do much help here, and he doesn't really have a whole lot of support, he has pretty much just kind of said forget it and is moving over to support, because the tank is not the best when it comes to being rushed by the enemy or even being focused by artillery, due to its size and rate of fire and everything. So he's going to move over here. He's going to move to another gentle slope and use that to get some good cross shots on the enemy as they try and flank around and gain a foothold on the southern half of the map here. This map is pretty much separated on this side of the river by those railroad tracks right there. That is essentially the middle line. That is the DMZ. And so most TDs will sit across and try and counter snipe each other. Gets a good shot in an Action X that was just crossing, and it looked like he was accepting the fact he was going to get damage there and was just saying forget it, and took the shot to get damage. But as you can see, he has suffered tremendously just to get to that position, and even then he was not doing a very good job of hiding his armor or weak points, and he was quickly eliminated. Earlier we saw that he was being able to get some good shots on an IS-7 as well from his position there. So far, so good. He has not taken any hits from artillery or any counter sniping TDs sitting across over in the BC90 area right there. Just take a little shot from somewhere. I didn't quite catch where it was, but he does take a blind shot to try and get some free damage right there on a tank, but it did not connect. So pushing up to the hill here in the middle, he takes another shot to cross, just kind of like the Action X did, although he took another shot there. So two shots too many, to be honest. Now he's in a position where he's able to hide his lower plate, but he's not really in a good position to hide the top of his tank there. The Valor, is in a position to where he technically could shoot down on top of the turret of the M454, and he would pen because of how weak it is on top there. So he's keeping that in mind there, and he crosses over the hill trying to get some little extra angle, make it harder. But what's eventually going to happen here is he's going to take another shot just because of the fact that he backed down over a ridge, and he pretty much exposed the lower portion of the tank. It's coming up here. I do remember this. I did speak too soon. As you can see, he did take that other shot. It did deal damage to him, but he's getting some good track assist for that trade right there. He spins around, seeing that there's enemy tanks coming up on his 6 o'clock. His teammates aren't really doing a whole lot to protect him right there, but as you can see, the 13105 is having a little bit of trouble trying to deal with him. Gets a good shot on that Leopard 1, doing another cross, trying to get some damage there. Don't know why the Leopard 1 was doing. Caught the Leopard 1 on fire. Got some track assist too. Leopard 1's dead. Fantastic right there. He's in a pretty good position, strong position, provided that he can keep his weak points hidden and in check, and that also his teammates don't just completely ignore the issues that he's facing and leave him out to die. Seeing an opportunity right there to try and sneak around behind the opponents there. He's sneaking around the mountain there. He does need to be careful though, as there may be something hidden up on that ridge. Oh, I was right. There is a Death Star hidden up there on the ridge, something you really don't want to see, but luckily the Death Star botched his shot, and terrain took an effect right there. 13105 is running away from his teammates, and he gets stuck on the train. Gets a Flying Egg gets a good shot there on the 13105, and the 13105 was still trapped there, and he was ultimately taken out by a friendly T-95E6 because he managed to not escape in time. Sitting here trying to make sure he's just already safe and he's off, he's no longer detected. He's sitting there. He is now aware that the Death Star is up there, so he's trying to play it a little bit more cautious. So what he's going to do now is he's going to try and keep the rock in between the ridge and himself, so that way he doesn't expose himself too long there. A full health, or mostly now decent health M48 is rushing him. Not the smartest idea. He did not know what was behind the M454, and he got punished for it, so now he's in a situation where he can be one-shot, and that is exactly what happened. Flying Egg at some point here completely burned out all his standard rounds and is now on his premium rounds, so at this point we can expect almost everything to pen. Gets a good shot on the Progetto 65 right now, and for the most part it's now just a cleanup operation. This game is won. So overall right now what we are looking at is definitely over 7k in combined damage right now at this point. It's a very good game in the AMX M454, and like it just proves the point here that yeah, it's not the strongest tank. You are not invincible. You will still take damage if you can't hide the weak points correctly or if you're caught in a certain situation. But in the right hands, this tank is very capable of being a big threat on the battlefield. And now, again, it's just cleaning up here. He's not going to get really the kill, and it's just going to end up being a very, very good game in the M454 on Hilbron. And, yeah. It's not much else really here to talk about at this point while we just wait for the game to end. But again, over 7k combined damage right there. It's a very good game and a very noteworthy game that showcases just how good this tank can be in the right hands. Other than that, I'm just going to let this play out. I'd like to thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit that thumbs up. And if you want to see more videos like this one, don't forget to subscribe. But until next time, this has been Darren of WotC Academy. And on a final note here, as before I leave, please let me know what you think of the new format that I have tried out with Filmora. A couple issues that I got to try and work out with, but I think for the most part it turned out pretty good. But please let me know what you think in the comments. Till next time, this has been Darren of WotC Academy.